What terrified Jordan about the Son of God? I have not seen this clip, guys. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jeffrey. Over here, we explore clips and break them down with a psychoanalytical analysis to the best of my ability. Interested in this one because any light we can shed that brings us closer to God and a further spiritual connection, I'm all for it. Now, it says on the thumbnail here, synchronicity. Synchronicity was an idea pushed by the psychologist Carl Jung. Jung was an advocate. He was a big player in putting together the idea of the spiritual awakening in the 12-step program of AA. And I'm interested to see if there's any connection in there. But at any rate, I'm sure that there's something. Well, let me shut up and let's let Jordan start talking and see what we can learn.
I understand and appreciate the symbolic significance of the ideal human being. And that finds its embodiment. And I took these ideas in large part from Jung and Erich Neumann. That Christ is at least a representation of the ideal man, whatever that is. And we all, interestingly enough, we all seem to have an ideal. And that ideal has us, right? And that's where.
What is the ideal man to you? Let me know down below.
It's very interesting to consider the role of conscience, because your conscience will call you out on your behavior. And so it seems to function as something that's somewhat independent, or at least as something that you can't fully voluntarily control, because if you could voluntarily control it, then you just tell the pesky little bastard to go away or to pat you on the back continually, because there must be few things in life more pleasurable than being a fully committed narcissist. To really believe that everything that you do is right and that you're a good person. And I suppose if you could wave a magic wand and rearrange your mind so that it was constantly telling you that, you'd do it, but you don't seem to be able to do that.
So that conscience always will tell you what right and wrong is. And if you have a problem with it, if you're struggling with your conscience, always ask yourself, does this decision that I'm about to make align with God, align with good, or does it align with the devil? Does it align with evil? And that conscience will let you know right away. Unless, of course, you're a sociopath or a complete narcissist, as Jordan just said.
That in relationship to your conscience, it trips you up. And so it tells you when you're not living up to your own ideal. And that means that you have an ideal and you don't even know what the hell it is, but you certainly know when you transgress against it. And I know that there's a strong line of Christian thinking that's identified the conscience with divinity, sometimes with Christ inside, sometimes with the Holy Spirit. And those are very interesting conceptualizations, but you can think of them psychologically, and you can even think about them biologically, to some degree, because we're so social. If we don't manifest an appropriate moral reciprocity, we're going to become alienated from our fellows, and we won't survive, and we'll suffer and die, and we certainly won't find a partner and have children successfully. And so to some degree, the conscience can be viewed as the voice of reciprocal society within, and that's a perfectly reasonable biological explanation. But the thing is the deeper you go into biology, the more it shades into something that appears to be religious, because you start analyzing the fundamental structure of the psyche itself.
Now, I just want to make a quick comment. Everything he's saying is great. I was just thinking about the bad decisions that I've made, and he said things lean towards religious. Now, look at our media. Let's say, for my generation, being raised watching MTV, right, and emulating the behaviors that were on there because we thought that was going to bring us to the next level of status in life or bring us what we wanted. And, religion wasn't being pushed. Good moral behavior wasn't being pushed. But of course, we always had this conscience inside of us, but we didn't know exactly where to take it. So now I think we're getting closer to this spiritual awakening.
And it becomes something
finally For me, anyways.
Well, it becomes something with a power that transcends your ability to resist it. So, okay, so you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading.
I want to hear what he said about the power to resist it. Hold on.
Well, it becomes something with a power that transcends your ability to resist it.
With a power that transcends your ability to resist it.
Okay, so you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and the critic.
How many times have you been in your house, in your room, and you said to yourself, I'm gonna walk a righteous path, I'm gonna change my life, and then the moment you got out to the world, someone challenged your idea and you gave in to their way of thinking, the old way of thinking, and you didn't make that change for yourself?
My critic, this particular critic
easy.
that I've been reading,
and me, I'm a little slow,
said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those...
Joseph Campbell wrote The Hero's Journey, for those who don't know.
Mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now, you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Because I've seen. Sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. That's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life.
Let me know on this one. This one I definitely want to hear. Where have you seen synchronicity in your own life? Let me know your stories.
And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable.
I'm fascinated by this concept of synchronicity. Sorry for stopping it.
Well, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. We treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to... that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believed that history and let's say the narrative meet.
Both, I think. I think because when you believe that, you buy both those stories. You believe that the narrative and the objective can actually touch.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that, you and I mean, this is a trivial example, but when we were discussing, we had a sequence of discussions around frog symbolism 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That was very bizarre, to say the least.
Frog symbolism.
That was a trivial example, relatively trivial example of the narrative world and the objective world coming together. Didn't feel that trivial at the time.
Well, the way that I like to deal with this is that one of the things, it's already there in your thought. It's already there in the way that you talk about reality, which is that one of the constitutive aspects of how reality unfolds and how it appears to us is something like attention, right? It's something, there's a hierarchy of manifestation, because everything that appears to us in the world has an infinite amount of details, right? It has an indefinite amount of ways that you could describe it, that you could angles by which you could analyze it. And so nonetheless, the world appears to us through these hierarchies of meaning, right? I always kind of use the example of a cup or a chair. Like a chair is just a multitude of things. It's a multitude of parts. How is it that we can say that it's one thing? There's a capacity we have to attend, and this capacity we have to attend is something like a co-creation of the world. And so the world actually exists.
Well, chair is a good example because, you can try to define it objectively, but you end up with beanbags and stumps, and
Exactly.
and they don't have anything in common. Well, they're both made of matter, for whatever that's worth. It's pretty trivial level of commonality, but you can sit on them.
Yeah,
and that's what
there's a mode of being which defines them.
Well, and that's so strange. So many of our object perceptions are projected modes of being. And so even the objective world is ineluctably contaminated with its utility, and then therefore with morality.
Exactly. And so I think that that's the key. The key is that once you understand that the world manifests itself through attention, and that consciousness has a place to play in actually the way in which the world reveals itself. And so you can try to posit a world outside of that first person perspective, but it's
good
kind
luck.
of deluded. It's a deluded activity.
Well, it's very, very difficult because you don't know what to make of something like time, because time has an ineradicably subjective element, and duration, which is different than time. I mean, time is kind of like the average rate at which things change, but duration is something like the felt sense of that time. And if you take away this objectivity, it isn't obvious what to do with time. And I think physicists stumble over this all the time, so to speak. So, and this is something that this intermingling of value and fact was something that I never thought I made much traction with Sam Harris. He didn't seem to me to be willing to admit how saturated the world of fact is inevitably with value. And I actually think he's denying the science at that point, because for everything I know about perceptual psychology, there's a great book called Vision as a... Oh God, now I can't remember the name of the books. That's memory trouble. I'll remember it.
No worries. The idea is that if that is true, then there are certain things which come out of that. There are certain necessary things down the road from that insight, which is that attention plays a part in the way the world lays itself out. One of them is that the stuff that the world is made of is partly something like attention, something like consciousness, and that has a pattern. And that pattern is the same pattern as stories. It doesn't lay itself out exactly the same, but things exist with a pattern which is similar to stories. They have identities, they have centers, they have margins, they have exceptions. And that's how stories lay themselves out. Like, so a story happens in time, how an identity, let's say, is broken down and then reconstructed. You could say that that's basically the story of every story, how something breaks down and is reconstructed. And so that is a way for us to perceive the identity of things.
Yeah, so I didn't really know what the second guy was talking about, but the part on synchronicity, let me know where you've experienced synchronicity in your own life. Thank you guys for watching.